Okay, so you've taken one of the most iconic characters from the Batman series, and you've turned Pennyworth into this kind of cool guy. So what led you to do this?
Well, I think there are a lot of characters we could have considered, but I mean, Pennyworth was somebody who had zero backstory, and many times he's been portrayed as just this stiff kind of butler. It was really Michael Caine when he worked with on those movies, those brilliant movies, who gave himself a military background. That made total sense to me because this was a guy who was eventually going to mentor Bruce Wayne, and we did that in Gotham. The idea that he's not just mentoring him into a man and giving him advice, he's physically helping the guy. So this is a guy with a lot of experience, and so we wanted to go back and say, where did that experience and that maturity come from? And why would somebody at the very beginning of the story go, I'll never be a butler, Dad, forget that, when we know he will? What's going to happen to this guy? What journey will he go on to fulfill that destiny, and why? So that got us talking, and and then coupled with the fact that we could, for the first time ever, create a DC-style 1960s England, was just like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's definitely it. I was worried at the beginning that we would know who the villains would be, but when you mine British history and you say, look, we're going to alter British history because this is an alternative DC reality, it's very close. It's only 13 degrees off. But what happened to Jack the Ripper's family? What happened to Myra Hindley? What happened to Jekyll and Hyde? Who's Dick Turpin here? When you start to realise that Guy Fawkes and all of these mythological characters and characters from British history are available to us, then you go, wow, that's an interesting bunch of villains.
So talking about, sorry.
You can go first.
So talking about the tone of the season, what can you tell us? Like a mix of little action, drama?
I think the arcing story this season is about a civil war that's brewing. And that came from a conversation when myself and Bruno were considering doing V for Vendetta. We were like, well, that's very much an 80s, 90s kind of show. What would it be in the 60s? What kind of world do we have to create? Like in Gotham, there will eventually be Batman. In this, there will eventually be V for Vendetta. So we took that as that civil war, or brewing civil war, as a stepping stone. And so England is just fresh out of a war, looking to get into another war. We don't know what deals it's made with other countries because the Second World War ended differently. So it's about espionage. It's almost like Funeral in Berlin or all those Cold War dramas, Michael Caine films, became influences.
Making a comic book show comes with a lot of baggage and, sense of fandom pressures. What lessons did you guys learn and take from doing Gotham for 5 years that you applied to Pennyworth?
I think when we were proudest of Gotham is when we treated it as a show that stood by itself, and we stopped adhering to like what comic books have done before. I always used to say it's like you're covering a song by the Beatles. You're not doing exactly like them and trying. It's you've got to give one singer one song. You've got to give the singer an opportunity to perform that song the way they want to perform it. So the minute we gave ourselves that freedom on Gotham, that helped us. And I think with this now, we just said, look, it's our take on this or bust. And if people don't like it, it's cool. You've got to just be proud of it, no matter what. So yeah, I just think that the DC canon is this beautiful place to go, and it's a church to go pray in, but it doesn't want to be completely simulated every time. You need to go run with that.
One of the things that you talked about, and one of the things I really enjoyed, was that the show stands on its own as its own entity, but it is kind of part of the DC Comics universe. So are there any comics that you mind or anything that you were inspired by from DC Comics?
You don't know until you're writing a scene, or until you're directing a scene, or until you see somebody actually performing a scene, what your influences have been. I've read so much of that stuff. If I grew up with that stuff, I've watched everything. I'm like nerd number one here. So you don't realise what you've been inspired by until you actually see it. There's a couple of scenes within that that, along with Michael Caine, or along with John Barry, or along with great British designers of that time, there is a comic book image that you've set up one day and you're like, oh my God, now I remember that frame, but I didn't know it until that moment. So it's nice when that happens.
How important was it for you to kind of give us an insight into Alfred's family life? Because we get a lot of that in the first episode.
Well, I think drama doesn't do that enough, and Bruno, I think, really had a good take on the parents. Because we'd spoken so much about why wouldn't Alfred want to be a butler. His father had to be a butler. He had to be able to talk to him in a way. And there's a great moment in episode 10, without giving too much away, where you see them together in butler attire. And it was really kind of a special moment because nothing says class system more like a butler. Not many people have butlers. Do you know what I mean? And butlers were working class men who spent their whole lives 24/7 assisting, helping, and keeping the image up of privileged families. And we know that's what Alfred's going to end up doing. So watching him resist that as much as he can, but deep down it's in his DNA. I think that we had a lot of fun with that.
One more question. When we watch the preview, visually you can almost see the difference between the Gotham and Pennyworth. I mean, Gotham, cool, gray, dark, overcast. Pennyworth had some warm tones, some brightness, like the scenery in the park. Are you trying to go for that visual effect of a different era? Plus, it's England. It's a different tone. It's a different period of time. Are you visually trying to go for a different aesthetic?
Absolutely. When I went back and looked at old films and old photographs, ironically, England wants to be cold, blue and grey constantly, but you have to fight that. And they were using a film stock called Agfa back in the day, or that old Kodak stock. And when I went back and looked at that, so much of it is tinted towards trying to cheer England up. And so I really took that, and I wanted to do a lot of fireplaces. So the warm glow of England and that tobacco-coloured stained walls and the cigar smoking, like that world I was very interested in, and all of my reference material was that. And it wasn't just that, because Gotham was much more comic book novel in that the images had to be impactful, and there was action, and it was very immediate. This I could slow down. I mean, one of the influences is The Crown, because The Crown had that 1950s period done very well, and it was calm, and it took its time, it was patient, like so many of those movies. So it was actually easier to shoot because I shot a lot less, a lot wider, and let the frames contain themselves like paintings, more than throwing the camera around for dynamic purposes,